What are the worst meals served in horror films? I am sure you have a couple in your mind, but can they rival the following list we have curated for you? January, my friend, an absolute horror fanatic, has put together an 8-course dinner for you, walking you through the worst appetizers to the worst desserts ever encountered in horror films to date. This list is nothing for the weak, so only proceed if you can finish the food. Also, check out her work down below, I've linked everything in the description. And now, my dear guests, you may enjoy your dinner. Every good dinner starts off with a soup or salad, but in one of Takashi Miike's most famous films, Audition, there is only soup on the menu. Bon appétit. In Japan's version of Fatal Attraction, Shigeharu Aoyama is a lonely widower whose teenage son encourages him to remarry. This is difficult as Shigeharu is middle-aged, withdrawn, and prefers a specific kind of woman, one that is young, innocent, and beautiful. His producer friend decides to help him by holding an audition for his new wife, something that is concealed from the women auditioning. They believe they are auditioning for a pretend role as Shigeharu's wife for an upcoming project, not auditioning to become his actual wife. Shigeharu finds a perfect candidate in Asami Yamasaki, a young, beautiful, and very talented actress in more ways than just one. Shigeharu decides that he is interested in pursuing her and is happy that she feels the same way. Unfortunately, Asami has more red flags than your average Tinder date. None of the references on her resume can be reached, and viewers see that Asami's apartment contains a large sack and a telephone nearby. For 4 days, Asami stays next to the telephone waiting for Shigeharu to call without leaving to eat or drink. Now, as Shigeharu and Asami become closer, she suddenly disappears. He tries to find her by visiting Asami's former workplaces, a dance studio where a man with prosthetic feet resides, and a bar that was abandoned after the owner was murdered and dismembered. If you're getting a bad feeling from this, you should. Asami hasn't disappeared. Instead, she is busy breaking into Shigeharu's apartment where she is infuriated to find a photo of his late wife. She feels betrayed after previously making him promise that he would only love her and never choose anyone else. This drives her to drug his nightly drink, which makes him pass out. Now all of this leads to the film's most notorious scene. Remember the sack inside her apartment? Inside of it is one of Asami's former lovers, a man that is missing his feet, tongue, 1 ear, and 3 fingers from 1 hand. For better or worse, the man is still alive and crawls out of the sack begging her to feed him. Asami doesn't plan on starving him, although you may wish that she would. Instead, she into a bowl before setting it to the floor where the man scarfs it down. Delicious, isn't it? If salad is more to your taste than soup, well, the following movie has you covered. So, the film follows Paxton Rodriguez, Josh Brooks, and Ollie Eriksson as they travel across Europe. On their way to beautiful Slovakia, they have an odd encounter with a Dutch businessman who eats a chicken salad with his bare hands. He is messy and loud while he eats and disgusts the men watching him. When the trio asks him why he doesn't use, a fork, the businessman says that he prefers to eat with his hands in order to feel connected to the food, something that he believes man has lost. After this, the businessman takes an interest in Josh and touches his knee, resulting in the trio forcing him out of their compartment. Things only become stranger after the trio stay at the hostel, where they meet 2 gorgeous women named Natalia and Svetlana, who welcome them to Slovakia by taking them around town before having with them. With the honey trap set, Ollie is the first one to vanish, along with a young Japanese woman. Despite their skepticism, Paxton and Josh stay at the hostel. This proves to be a mistake, as it gives the women an opportunity to slip drugs into their drinks. Natalia and Svetlana have been playing the main characters so far, as they work for a company that offers rich businessmen an exclusive service. Innocent people using any tools imaginable for their entertainment. Josh wakes up tied to a chair in a concrete cell where he meets his Dutch best friend again, only his friend this time intends on torturing him. First him with a drill before his Achilles tendon and his throat. What makes this scene so much worse is what happened towards the beginning of the film, when Paxton, Josh, and Ollie first met the businessman. Remember how he preferred to eat his chicken salad with his bare hands, saying that he likes the connection between himself and his prey? This preference becomes clear as the businessman removes his gloves and uses his bare hands intentionally to kill Josh. That's a very sinister thing to do. The businessman views Josh and human life in general like he views a chicken salad. He is a predator and they are nothing but his prey. It is worth to mention that one person who was not a fan of Hostel, or its chicken salad, was the legendary horror director John Carpenter, who created horror masterpieces like the Halloween series and The Thing. The director said that while he enjoyed the Saw series for its humor, Hostel was too unforgiving and too cruel. Go figure. Continuing with the entree, also called the main course, the next dish is as opulent as it is healthy. After all, the perfect entree is as filling as it is delicious, something that the carnies in Rob Zombie's film 31 are lucky enough to discover. The film follows a group of 5 carnies that are kidnapped and forced to play a survival game called 31. For the next 12 hours, the carnies have to survive a maze of traps and the group of clowns called the Heads that wants to see them dead. To top it off, the filthy rich are watching, of course, and bet on who will survive this terrible game. After 4 of the carnies survive their first attack by Sickhead, a clown that idealizes a certain German Führer, they are left starving and exhausted. Luckily, they soon find a dining room table covered with plates full of delicious meat. Or is it? Well, one thing is sure, the makers of the game invite them to have a feast. At this point, would you trust the game makers enough to sit down and have a meal? You may say no, and that is exactly what the carnies say too, until Panda here says that he can't fight on an empty stomach. Panda does have a point here. Eating red meat can energize you, as it is full of vitamin B12 and iron. This convinces the rest of the group, including Charlie, played by Ron Zombie's wife Cheryl Moon by the way, to start eating too. The game has several more hours to go and the group has to do everything they can to survive. Unfortunately for them, this means their friend Levin, who was killed earlier in the film by Sickhead. The meat they have been eating was from Levin's body, which is hidden beneath the banquet table until Cheryl discovers him there. The group begins vomiting, which goes to show that no matter how hard you may work to prepare a meal, some people are just unappreciative. It's also worth noting that human counts as red meat. Don't ask me how I know this, I just do. This means it would indeed energize the group. All thanks to Levin. Thank you, Levin. If the idea of eating your friend doesn't appeal to you, maybe the next entree choice will. In David Lynch's serialist horror film Eraserhead, Henry Spencer has a child with his girlfriend Mary X. Unlike normal children, their child never stops crying, refuses all food, and looks more like a gooey worm than a human being. While the inspiration for Eraserhead is disputed, Lynch's daughter Jennifer was born with clubbed feet and saw the film as reflective of her father's feelings towards her and her role in the family. However, we're not looking at the relationship between Henry and his child, nor their real-life counterpart, but something much more gruesome: the dinner party. Yep. As Henry's relationship with Mary deepens, he is invited over to have dinner with her and her parents. At dinner, Mary's father offers Henry the opportunity to carve the entree, a creature that Mary's father made to resemble a chicken. But unlike an actual chicken, the creature moves its naked wings up and down and gushes blood from its privates before Henry even tries to carve it. It is an incredibly unsettling scene, one that is even worse because the creature makes the same sound as puppies suckling from their mother. A scene that was in fact shown when Henry first arrived at Mary's home. In fact, Eraserhead is infamous for its use of disturbing sounds and the uneasy atmosphere that results thereof. The scene only worsens as Henry appears to be the only one who notices that something's wrong with the meal and with Mary's mother, who seems to fall into a trance state. She starts humming before suddenly screaming and runs into the kitchen with Mary right behind her. Stunned, Henry is left at the table with Mary's smiling father and a platter full of mystery meat. With entree choices like that, it's easy to see why Henry's child doesn't want to eat anything, right? However, I'm not so sure if the carnies of 31 would agree. In fact, I would like to think that they would choose to eat the chicken instead of their friend Levin. What comes after the entree? Dessert, of course. Bon appétit. In Stephen Chiodo's cult classic horror film Killer Clowns from Outer Space, a mischievous alien species decides to bring their circus to Earth. Literally. One unfortunate farmer, Gene Green, sees a glowing object come crashing down. But instead of finding Halley's Comet, he finds a giant circus tent and its inhabitants. It doesn't take long until he and his faithful pet dog are kidnapped before they exactly know what exactly is happening. That is left up to our main characters, Mike Tobacco and Debbie Stone, to find out, who follow the farmer's trace. They explore the circus tent and realize that it's part of a spaceship, and that its inhabitants are not exactly your traditional extraterrestrials. Instead of little green men with faces implying an unhealthy Botox addiction, the aliens in this film wear clown suits. That's right, including the iconic white face paint, brightly colored hair, and of course, the red nose. They use an array of weapons too, including a bazooka that shoots popcorn, a dog made from balloons, and even shadow puppets, to terrorize our Crescent Cove residents, including a biker gang, families with young children, and an ice cream truck worker, to death. You see, the clowns are very, very hungry, and humans just happen to be their favorite snack. The clowns use ray guns to encase people in a sticky, bright pink substance that look like cotton candy. For an adorable touch, the cocoons are shaped like giant light bulbs too, only they hold a terrifying secret, as the main characters discover the cocoons aren't merely some kind of storage pot. Nope, the cocoons are turning people into a gelatin-like substance. Why? Well, the clowns love to drink the sugary sweet substance that we seem to become in there. They also don't forget their table manners, as they use straws to drink directly from the cocoons. The cotton candy cocoons are not only a deliciously devious dessert, but a reference to the cocoon traps in the movie The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. In this classic sci-fi movie, the cocoons contain exact physical copies of the townspeople, which aliens use to replace them with. The film is one of the director's, Kyoto's, favorites, and he admits that the cocoon in our film here was an unintentional reference to it. And while Killer Clowns from Outer Space is more humorous than it is terrifying, the idea of becoming a dessert for aliens is as unsettling as the idea of being replaced by an extraterrestrial clone. If you're too full or too nauseous to think of eating dessert, don't worry, there is more coming. Something Brenda here did not expect either. Well, in James Gunn's comedy horror film Slither, a small town is invaded by alien parasites that turn the townspeople into gruesome monsters. Grant here is the first townsperson to be infected, which is unfortunate for Brenda because she has a huge crush on him, although he's married. But who cares, right? With the alien controlling Grant, he has sex with Brenda, he needs a breeder and decides that Brenda is perfect, instead of his sweet wife, Starla. Things only get worse for Brenda when the townspeople later find her in the barn, where she has grown to humongous proportions. Inside of her are starving, and she can't just eat enough, which explains the missing pet epidemic. Brenda begs police chief Bill Party to give her more to eat, like the rotting possum near him. Only, before Bill can give it to her, Brenda can't eat anymore. Literally, no room for dessert. She explodes with larvae, infecting almost everyone around her. Bon appetit. And while I feel bad for the townspeople, I feel much worse for Brenda, who just wanted to spend the night with her crush. She never signed up to be, well, an alien breeder, did she? Let me introduce you to the final regular course of today. The reason why we choose Tobe Hooper's slasher film, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, may surprise you. 5 young people take a road trip through Texas and veer off track with terrible consequences. Sally Hardesty and her brother Franklin have a family history with animal slaughter, something they share with a hitchhiker the group offers a ride to. Unfortunately, the group chooses the most dangerous hitchhiker they possibly could, anywhere, and after refusing to buy a photograph he takes of them, he attacks Franklin. The group throws him out of the van, but soon encounters a second problem. They are running low on gas. Unfortunately, the gas station is out of gas as well, and the group has to look elsewhere for help, leading them directly to Leatherface's door. The masked cannibal uses his chainsaw on each member of the group until only Sally is left. What results is one of the most iconic scenes of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series, and perhaps one of the scariest. Sally awakens to find herself bound to a dining room chair, surrounded by the cannibalistic family. Leatherface, the gas station owner, the hitchhiker, and of course, the old man that they call Grandpa. The family teases Sally with the meat they're eating, forcing her to think of who instead of what they're eating. Even worse is when Sally, along with the viewers, realizes that she isn't a dinner guest, but dinner herself. Can you imagine being in Sally's place? You're surrounded by a family of cannibals who kill your friends and plan to and eat you next, which is what happens. Almost. As the family encourages Grandpa to with a hammer while she kneels over an old basin, they quickly realize that he is too weak to do so. This gives Sally a chance to escape from becoming the worst meal on this list. Or do you think one of the other meals was worse? Let me know. So, the grand finale, the last chance to leave a lasting impression. There is hardly a better choice for that course than the meals served in We Are What We Are. Jim Mickle's psychological horror We Are What We Are is a remake of George Michel Grau's film by the same name, and both versions are difficult to watch. In Mickle's version, the Parkers are a solitary religious family that is devastated by the loss of their matriarch. Everything that Mrs. Parker did now has to be done by her young daughters, Rose and Iris. Say hello to adulthood. You see, the Parkers have a certain diet. Much like Leatherface and his family, they eat humans. Only, where Leatherface and his family enjoyed torturing their prey, Rose and Iris are uncertain about their diet, especially after their father forces them to participate. They have to a young woman their father took captive months earlier. The build-up to the meal comes when Iris rebels against her family by having with Deputy Anders. They're discovered by Frank, her father, who quickly kills the officer. This is also when things get worse, much worse. Feeling that his family is spiraling out of control and seeing the riverbank where they buried their victims wash away countless remains, Frank decides to commit by lacing the family's dinner with arsenic. His plan not only includes taking himself and his daughters out, but also his toddler son, Rory. While preparing to run away, Rose discovers her father's plan and watches as Rory is about to eat the poisoned meal. She decides to intervene, a decision that leads to the death of their neighbor Marge, who tries to protect the children. Marge's death scene, like the young woman before, is very difficult to watch. All of this leads up to what we found to be the worst meal on this list. With his children returned to him, Frank serves him the same arsenic-laced meal. The scene is not only horrifying because of Frank's intentions and the carnage that comes after, but also because we see the death of Rose and Iris trying to be normal. It isn't hard to see why, as their attempts to deny their family's legacy have led to the death of their loved ones and horrendous torture by their father. What follows is an assault on the senses, as the girls proceed to rip Frank's flesh off with their teeth. Him while he screams until he perishes. When daylight comes, Rose and Iris leave with Rory to find somewhere new to live. And in Rose's arms is a family diary that her father gave to her, detailing their ancestors' turn to cannibalism. The ending is as stark and unforgiving as the entire film. The film is too cruel and too real. Viewers cannot escape from the world while they watch the film. Instead, they see something as horrible as what's in the news, just uncensored.